in the epistle stage, the epistles that weren't written by Paul are usually described as the general epistles. We have the book of Hebrews, mainly because it doesn't say who the author is. We have the book of James, we have 1st and 2nd Peter, we have the 3 epistles of John, and the book of Jude. I put the book of Hebrews in here because this is where it traditionally fits in the general epistles. Possible writers include Apollos and Barnabas and Paul. It was originally disputed for a bit and then added to the canon because of Paul's influence. And perhaps maybe it could be regarded as written by Paul if we take into account that the differences in language, the differences in style, have more to do with the kind of literature that the book of Hebrews is, rather than what we know of Paul as a usual epistle. For example, this is actually not an epistle. It begins with a description of the supremacy of Christ straightforwardly, but it is more of a sermon, a written sermon describing the supremacy of Christ. So whoever wrote it is an excellent writer using Old Testament interpretation to move and show how in each instance of the Jewish religious system, Christ is superior. He's superior to Moses. He's superior to the sacrifices. He's superior to the high priest. He is a better rest for you and for me. So that's the book of Hebrews. It is an incredible book. And some theologians have said if they could only have one book to take with them in the desert island, this would be it because of the material that's there. So great book for study. Then we have the book of James, which may be the earliest book in the New Testament. This is James, the brother of Jesus, and it is our book of wisdom for the New Testament. So if you are looking for good wisdom and practical instruction, the book of James is the way to go. Luther didn't like it so much. He called it a right strawy epistle. And the reason for that is Luther was by grace alone, by faith alone, and James seems to indicate that faith and works work together. And they're both right. James has a different perspective writing, and he doesn't say that you have to have works in order to be saved. It's that the works that faith that saves ends up working. So that's how faith and works relate. It is not that works make a difference in your standing before God, but faith that produces our acceptance and justification before God will result in good works. And that's the point that James is trying to make. Don't stop the process. Then 1st and 2nd Peter are circular letters like the other ones. 1st Peter describes our behavior as a holy people and what God desires for us. And then 2nd Peter gives us a warning against false teachers. A couple of great passages along the way in 1st Peter about our relationship with Christ and what we have. So check that out. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. 1st John gives us several tests by which we could examine and build assurance in our faith in Christ. 2nd John is an interesting short letter about the need to show discernment in hospitality. He writes to the elect lady, and he describes for her these itinerant evangelists that come through and the need not to just show hospitality indiscriminately, but to make sure that the hospitality you show really advances the gospel cause and not unwittingly advances error. So that's 2nd John. 3rd John is the story of Diotrephes, who is standing against the process of showing hospitality because it doesn't further his ministry. So 3rd John has to do with doing hospitality even when it's opposed by people in the church. There we are. And then Jude has a number of similarities to 2 Peter, and they are dependent on one another in some fashion. And Jude is a warning against those false teachers who would derail the gospel. So those are our general epistles, and they have the characteristic of probably being written by somebody else. You can see that I'm still kind of hold out for Paul and authorship in Hebrews, but Hebrews is still a part of those general epistles. So I wanted to introduce you both to Paul's writings in the other video, and then the general epistles in this one. Together, they make up what Dr. Wilmington put into the epistles stage.